So let's talk about one of the greatest marketing stories ever told. You know the one. It's the story that didn't just launch a sneaker empire, it created a global icon. But what if I told you the whole thing, the very foundation of it, was built on a brilliant, calculated lie?
You remember this, right? That legendary Nike commercial from 1985? So dramatic. Just black bars over Michael Jordan's feet. It was the perfect story of rebellion. The big, bad NBA telling this incredible young player what he couldn't wear. And Nike, his partner in crime, basically saying, go for it. We'll pay the fines.
Well, here's the thing that changes absolutely everything. That entire story, the banned shoe, the fines, the whole rebellion, it was a masterful piece of fiction. Seriously, it was a marketing heist that has been hiding in plain sight for almost 40 years. Okay, so before we completely tear this legend apart, we gotta understand why it was so powerful in the first place. Let's just quickly recap the myth that pretty much everyone, from hardcore sneakerheads to CEOs, has believed for decades.
The story goes like this, and it's simple, which is why it's so brilliant. The NBA had this strict 51% rule that your shoes had to be mostly white to match your teammates. Of course, Jordan's flashy black and red sneakers broke that rule. So the league supposedly slapped him with a $5,000 fine every single time he wore them, and Nike, they just paid it. Boom. Jordan becomes a rebel, and the shoe becomes this forbidden fruit. It's a fantastic story.
But to really get why Nike would make this all up, you have to go back to 1984 and see just how much trouble they were in. Because this was not the Nike we know today. Back then, Nike was on the ropes.
I mean, they were a running shoe company, and frankly, they were losing the culture war to brands like Reebok. Things were so bad, they had their first ever losing quarter and had to do massive layoffs, something the employees grimly called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. They were absolutely desperate.
So what do you do when you're desperate? You make a massive bet. They took their entire marketing budget, $2.5 million, and poured it all into a 5-year deal with a rookie from North Carolina who hadn't even played a single pro game yet. It was a total all-or-nothing gamble.
All right, so this is where the investigation really begins. The first piece of evidence that makes this entire myth just fall apart is the shoe itself. Because the shoe that Nike built this whole legend around, yeah, that wasn't the one that got in trouble.
So here's the bait and switch. Everyone, and I mean everyone, thinks the iconic Air Jordan 1 was banned. But the truth is, the shoe that actually got the NBA's attention was a completely different model called the Nike Airship. Jordan was wearing these in the preseason while they were still getting the Air Jordan 1 ready. And we've got the receipts. Look at the timeline. On October 18th, Jordan wears the Airship, and the NBA warns him. But then, look at the date on the formal letter they send. February 25th, 1985. It specifically talks about the shoes worn way back in October. By the time that letter even existed, the Air Jordan 1 was already being worn in games. Nike just kinda let everyone assume the letter was about their shiny new signature shoe. Okay, so they fibbed about the shoe. But what about all that money? The dramatic story of Nike cutting a check for $5 grand every single night? Yeah, let's try and follow the money on that one. Just think about it for a second. An 82-game season at $5,000 a pop? That's over $400,000. In 1985 money, that is a huge chunk of change. For a story this famous, you'd think there would be some kind of paper trail, right? Like invoices or canceled checks or something. But there's nothing. That so-called proof, the NBA letter, it just confirms a warning was issued. It never even mentions a $5,000 fine. In fact, the fine they initially threatened was closer to $1,000. The real threat was never about money anyway. It was suspension. The NBA made it crystal clear that if Jordan kept breaking the rule, they'd just kick him out of games, which would have completely destroyed Nike's investment. And this quote right here from Nike VP Rob Strasser tells you everything. When he heard the league might fine them, he didn't see a problem. He called it a marketing gift. His reaction shows they were already thinking about how to spin this. They basically saw the NBA not as a roadblock, but as their own personal and totally free PR firm. So if the shoe is wrong and the fines were basically made up, how in the world did this lie become so powerful? Well, it all comes down to a really clever understanding of how our brains work.
It's a psychological principle called reactance, and the idea is actually super simple. When some authority figure tells you that you can't have something, your desire for it goes through the roof. It's that classic forbidden fruit effect, and boy, did Nike weaponize it.
So here's the playbook. It was a masterclass. Step 1, make the NBA the stuffy, old-school bad guy. Step 2, cast your amazing rookie as the cool, defiant hero.
And step 3, this is the real genius part. They turned the act of buying a shoe into a statement. You weren't just a customer anymore, you were joining a protest. You were sticking it to the man.
And here's the final piece of the whole puzzle. How did they keep this rebel myth going without getting their star player, their multi-million-dollar asset, suspended? It was easy. While all the commercials and ads were talking about the banned black and red shoe, Jordan spent most of his actual games wearing this version, the Chicago colorway. It was mostly white and perfectly legal. They sold the legend, but played by the rules.
So the big question is, did this whole elaborate lie actually pay off? Well, let's just say it created one of the most powerful and profitable brands in the history of the world.
I mean, the scale of the success here is just staggering. Nike's internal goal, what they were hoping for, was to sell $3 million worth of Air Jordans in the first year. Thanks to the whole banned story, they sold 126 million. They didn't just beat their goal, they completely obliterated it. And the legacy of that one little lie is just mind-blowing. Today, the Jordan brand, all by itself, brings in over $5 billion for Nike every single year. And it all started from a story about a shoe that wasn't banned and a fine that was never paid.
And this might be the wildest part of the whole thing, the ultimate irony. Nike has sold the lie so successfully for so long that it has become the truth. They now officially celebrate October 18th, the day Jordan wore the Airship, as Banned Day. They've literally turned their marketing fiction into official company history.
You know, when you boil it all down, the banned Air Jordan story proves something really powerful. We don't just buy products, we buy stories. We buy into these myths of rebellion, of being different, of greatness. Which really just leaves us with one last question to think about. In the battle for our attention and our wallets, what's more valuable? The actual truth, or just a really, really good story?